Hello everyone, welcome back to our Mishnah Berurah here. And I want to point out, before we even begin where we're up to, I want to point out to those of you that are listening to this on Purim, that we're being mkayem another halachah that we learned in Hilchos Pesach. And that is, I'm going to take you all the way back to the beginning of Chelik Hey in Siman Taf Chaf Tes. The Mechaber says in Taf Chaf Tes Sif Aleph, Shayalin behilchos Pesach kaidam la Pesach shloishim yom. We start to speak and to darshan and to ask Shilas be'inyan Hilchos Pesach already 30 days before Pesach. When's 30 days before Pesach? Today, Purim. Says the Mishnah Berurah in Ois Cotton Bays, Shloishim Yom, Umaschilin Miyom HaPurim Atzmai. On Purim itself, that's when we start to be Dirish in Hilchos Pesach. So here we are on Purim, Shloishim Yom Kaidem L'Chag, and we're learning Hilchos Pesach in kiyum of a halachah that we learned way back in Siman Taf Chaf Tes. And not only that, but the Mishnah Berurah also says over here, V'achshav nehagin lidrosh b'Shabbos hagadol. Nowadays, the minhag has become to darshan on Shabbos hagadol in Hilchos Pesach. But the Mishnah Berurah points out, V'ha'ikar l'harois la'am darchei Hashem la'lamed ha'maisa asher yasun. What's the ikar of being shoyel v'dirish in Hilchos HaPesach Shloishim Yom Kadam L'Chag? It's not to say a nice drasha and to speak about the Makkos and Yetzias Mitzrayim. That's not the ikar of shoyel v'darshan. It's the halachah l'maisa of Hilchos Pesach, how you ferzach on Pesach. The halachah is what you need to know. What does he say here? Dahainu dinei hagala. What did we just finish in Siman Taf Nun Aleph and Taf Nun Beis? The halachas of Hagala, of kashering your kalim, or biur chametz, and the halachas of biur chametz. We already learned, we already covered the halachas of bedika and of biur, va'afias hamatzah, and the halachas of afias matzah that we're learning now. Today we're going to speak about tchina, about Shmurah Matzah, shiur Hilchos Pesach. So we're mamish being mkayem this halacha that we learned back in Siman Taf Chaf Tes. Now, with that Hagdama, I take you to Mem Zayin Amid Beis, where we are holding in Sif Gimel. So we're on Mem Zayin Amid Beis, the Mechaber in Sif Gimel. Says the Mechaber, Im loy beruru hachitim me'achilas achbar ein bekach klum. If you did not check the wheat to make sure that there are no signs that an achbar, that a rodent of some kind, ate from the grain, it's not a problem. What would the potential problem be? Let's take a look in the Mishnah Berurah, Eis Katan Tes Vav, Hachitim. If you didn't check the wheat, now the Mechaber made special mention of chitim. He didn't say dagon, he didn't say grain. Remember, we learned previously that really you're allowed to make matzah out of any of the chamisha mine dagon, any of the 5 species of grain. You could use wheat, spelt, oats, rye. So why does he mention barley? Why does he mention over here specifically chitim? Says the Mishnah Berurah, v'hu hadin sha'ar mine dagon. The Mishnah Berurah takes the position over here, and he's not saying it from himself, he's taking it from the Eliyah Rabbah, who brings a raya from the Chuvas Harashba that this is the case. He says that we're not restricting this only to chitim, it applies to any of the chamisha mine dagam you can make matzah out of. However, in the Sharet Zion Ois Chaf Aleph, you'll see here it says, Udaloi kemagen Avraham shemistapik bazeh. This that the Mishnah Berurah is saying, that this halacha, that it's okay if you didn't check the chitim for any signs that rodents ate from them, that the Mechaber says it's not a problem by chitim, it might be that it's only not a problem by chitim, but it is a problem by other species of grain, and we'll get back in a minute to why this is significant. First, we didn't see yet what the potential problem is. Says the Mishnah Berurah, nice cut and tes zayin, ein bekach klum. It's not a problem, even though you didn't check the wheat for signs that a rodent may have eaten from it, not a problem. Why? Shein hagarger machmitz mimiut roik shebefi ha'achbar, because a kernel of grain is not going to become chametz from the small amount of moisture from the saliva that's in the rodent's mouth. So here we see what the potential problem is. The potential problem is if there are signs in the grain that a rodent has come here and has been snacking from the grain, maybe we have to worry that the moisture from the saliva in the rodent's mouth may cause chimutz in the grain. So now maybe we have a chash chametz in this grain. Says the mechaber, no, it's not a problem. V'lachein, and since this is not a problem, since that's tiny, that minuscule amount of moisture is not going to cause chimutz, v'lachein, afilu ein shishim negdan, even if you don't have shishim, even if you don't have 60 parts of grain, which is fine, that a rodent never touched, against the little bit that a rodent may have touched, shari b'di'evid. B'di'evid, it's okay, even if the amount that the rodent touched with his tongue and with his mouth, even if those grains are not bottle, b'di'evid, it's not a problem, because b'di'evid, we're going to say that even that grain was not machmitz. It didn't become chametz from that minuscule amount of moisture. V'ayin l'kamon siman tov samach vav midin achilas achbar b'kemach u'mashe kasavnu sham, and we'll see that later in siman tov samach vav. So, what do we see over here? We see over here the mechaber says, really, you should check and see, did a rodent eat from here? And if you see that a rodent ate from there, so get rid of what it looks like that the rodent may have touched. But if you didn't check, it's okay. Why is it okay? It's okay because that minuscule amount of moisture is not going to cause chimutz. Since that minuscule amount of moisture is not going to cause chimutz, even if you don't have shishim keneged the grain that the achbar touched, you're still okay. Now, let's go back to what I mentioned previously. The Magen Avram says that this may be true only by chitim, but it might not be true by other grains. Now, in this Magen Avram, I'll hearken back to what I told you a few days previously, and that is, one of the reasons why lechatchila we make matzah out of wheat and not out of any of the other 5 species of grain is because of a worry, maybe all of the shiurim that we have, that it takes 18 minutes to become chametz, everything that we know about baking matzah and preparing matzah in a way where we don't have to worry that there's any chimutz, maybe all of that mesorah is only by wheat. Maybe it doesn't apply to spelt. Maybe it doesn't apply to oats. Maybe it doesn't apply to rye. Maybe it doesn't apply to barley. And because of that, we are careful to only use wheat unless we have a real problem that for some reason we can't use wheat. Other than that, we use wheat. So I would caution everybody. And nowadays, when you have so many bakeries that are making spelt, that are making oat, and you have people who say that they're gluten-free, I don't know why. I'm not talking about people who have celiac disease. I'm talking about there are people nowadays who are gluten-free because they say that, it helps with a whole myriad of health problems. Personally, I think it's a fad, but I'm not a doctor. But whatever it is, for whatever reason, still, for matzah on Pesach, use wheat. And this Magen Avram is a source that a lot of others bring. And they say, you see from this Magen Avram, who says that this halachah of the moisture of the achbar might only be by wheat. We know that by wheat, we can say that a minuscule amount of moisture from the mouth of a rodent doesn't cause chimutz. But we don't know if that's true by the other 5 species of grain. And the Magen Avram says, maybe that's why the mechaber over here says chitim. He doesn't say dagon, he says chitim. Okay, so now let's go weiter. So now we know what the potential problem over here was, and the mechaber says, not a problem. If you didn't check the chitim, it's not a problem. Now let's go back up to the words of the Ramah on the bottom line, Mem Zayin Amud Beis. Haga. V'chein, similarly, im loy berurah mimenu oisai dagon shetzamach. Let's say you have your pile of grain, and really, you should check through the pile of grain, because especially the grain that's on the bottom of the pile, if it's sitting on the ground, we know that there's dampness that comes from the ground. And kernels of grain will start to ferment. They will start to become chametz from the moisture of the ground. So really, you should check through your grain and make sure to take out any kernels that may have begun to sprout, because those could have a chimutz problem. And indeed, we're going to see that's real chimutz. If that really started to sprout, that's chametz gomor. So really, you should be checking through and taking out those kernels. Yet the Ramah says, "V'cheinim loy berurah mimenu oisai dagon shetzamach." If you did not check through the pile and take out the kernels that may have begun to sprout, Also, this is not a problem. However, the Ramah does continue, and the Ramah does say, Mihu. However, even though I'm telling you that if you didn't check, it's not a problem, Tzarech Liroi she'ein boi kol kach, you have to look through the grain that you're using now for your matzah, and you have to see that there isn't so much grain that sprouted. Shelo yehi shishim kenegdai ben aheter. Make sure you don't have such a problem that you have so many kernels that already began to sprout that you don't have shishim in the non-sprouted kernels against the sprouted kernels. Because if you don't have shishim, then you have a problem. That's what the Ramah is saying here. I'm telling you that it's not a problem if you didn't take out the sprouted kernels. However, Miu, Tzarech Lirois, you have to make sure she'ein boi kol kach, that you don't have so many sprouted grains, shelo yehi shishim kenegdei ben heter, that you don't have shishim against them in the heter, in the non-sprouted grains. And he brings this from the Agos Maimonis and the Trumas Hadeshen. Now, let's take a look what the Mishnah Berurah says here so that we understand this on a deeper level. Says the Mishnah Berurah in Ois Katan Yud Zayin, V'chein shetzamach shekoirin ois gewachsen. Ois gewachsen, that means it sprouted, it began to grow. Ritzainai loymar. What the Ramah wants to say over here is, Da'av shedogon shetzamach machmas lach luchis ha'aretz. Although any grains that began to sprout from the dampness of the ground, hu chametz gamur, that is real bona fide chametz, that's chametz gamur, mikamakam kishaloi berer ein lesser. Still in all, even though we're talking about chametz gamur over here, still in all, if you didn't go through the grain and take out those sprouted grains, it's okay. We're not going to aser this grain. You could use it to make flour for your matzah. Why? Lefi shemisbatlin b'soich hachitem hakisherim. Because these sprouted grains that are chametz gamur, they are bottle in the rest of the non-sprouted grains. Umutter l'tachnan hakoil biyachad. And now you could take all of this grain, the sprouted grain together with the non-sprouted grain, and you could grind it all together to make flour for Pesach. You'll ask me, why don't you have a problem of ein mevatlin iser lechatchila? We know always there's an iser. You're not allowed to take something, a treifa ingredient, and throw it into a mix and say, this shishim keneged it. I'm going to be mevatlin. Ein mevatlin iser lechatchila. Lechatchila, you're not allowed to go be mevatlin iser biyadayim. So, if we have a stack of grain over here, and we know that there are sprouted kernels that we were just told are chametz gamur, so why is it that you're allowed to take it and grind it together with the other flour? Why isn't mevatlin iser lechatchila? Says the Mishnah Berurah, it's not. You're allowed to grind it all together. And what the Mefarshim say over here is, and in my mind I'm still trying to sort this out, but I'm going to tell you what the Mefarshim say. The Mefarshim say it's okay, because you're not going ahead to be mevatel iser. It's not pshat. Let's say you're cooking a dish, you're a commercial baker, or you're a commercial caterer, and there's a certain ingredient that you have a shiur on, it's a treifa ingredient, and you say to yourself, oh yeah, this ingredient is treif, but what's the percentage in the mix? Are you kidding? There's 500 of heter keneged this treifa ingredient. So I'm going to throw the ingredient in, and it's going to be bottled. So over there, your intent is, I'm throwing this ingredient in, even though it's a treifa ingredient, because I want to be mevatel it in the rest. Over here, that's not what you're doing. It's not that I'm putting in sprouted grains in order to be mevatel it. No, I'm throwing all of my grain into the mill because I want to mill my grain. My intent over here is to mill my grain. My intent is not to be mevatel iser. I have some kernels in here that are sprouted. I didn't sort them out. I don't know where they are. And what am I going to do now? So I just want to grind my grain. The halachah tells me, yes, you could go ahead and grind your grain because you have no intent of being mevatel iser. That's not your intent, and that's why the Mishnah Berurah says here that this is not a problem. And matter of fact, you could take a look at the words of the Shari Tzion himself in Ois Katan Chav Gimel. Ve'ein zeh b'chlal mevatel iser. This is not a shiur of mevatel iser lechatchila. She'ein kavanasei b'tchinasei levatlam. When you go to do the milling and do the grinding, your kavanah is not, I am going and I'm being mevatel these sprouted grains. No. Ela litcha nesachitim. All you want to do is grind your wheat, and this is taken from the Tur. Let's go weiter in the Mishnah Berurah, and he's cutting Yud Zayin. V'haskamas harbe achronim. Many achronim agree the mutter le'efos afilu bepesach, that you're allowed to bake these matzahs even on Pesach. So let's recap what we're talking about here. We have a stack of grain. We have some sprouted grains mixed in. So we took it and we ground this flour before Yom Tov. And we said it's not a problem because the tiny amount of sprouted grain, which is chametz gomer, is going to be bottled in the rest of the grain. And we said I'm allowed to do that. So now I have flour. This flour has mixed into it a minuscule amount of chametz gomer, right? Oh, why are you allowed to use that? Well, the reason you're allowed to use that is because over here you have a taruvas chametz. You have a mixture that contains a small amount of chametz. Now, this mixture, once it's ground into flour, so before Yom Tov, before Pesach began, right? Even the truth is, if it's after the Zman of Isser on Erev Yom Tov, because we say chametz is not aser b'mashahu until nightfall. So if you ground this grain before Yom Tov, the small amount of sprouted grain was batel b'shishim. Now, on Pesach, chametz is aser b'mashahu. So what happens now? Do we say chayzer v'neyar? Do we say that the small amount of sprouted grain that's in this taruvas chametz, in this flour, is now reawakened, and now the chametz is aser b'mashahu? So we learned previously that it depends what kind of mixture we're talking about. Are we talking about a mixture of yavesh b'yavesh? Is this a mixture of dry ingredients, or is it lach b'lach? Or is it a mixture of moist, wet ingredients? We said that by yavesh b'yavesh, where Machmer the Ramah said, and we hold that a taruvas of yavesh b'yavesh, the chametz is chayzer v'neir, it reawakens on Pesach and it's a problem. How do we look at flour? So in halachah we say that according to many shittas, flour is considered lach balach. Even though the flour might physically be dry, we view it as a mixture of lach balach. Why? What's the difference between yavesh b'yavesh and lach balach? The difference is that by a mixture of yavesh b'yavesh, we say that the dry ingredient of Isser is still be'en. It's still whole, it's still distinct inside the mixture. By a mixture of lach balach, by a mixture of wet ingredients, everything totally mixes. So the Isser is no longer be'en. Therefore, by lach balach, we say chametz is not chayzer v'neir. By yavesh b'yavesh, we say chametz is chayzer v'neir. How about flour? Do we look at flour as lach balach or yavesh b'yavesh? So many shittas say that flour is actually lach balach, because open up a bag of flour. That is thoroughly mixed. Are you going to be able to take out grains? You can't separate out grains of flour. So memela flour, many say, is lach balach. Since it's lach balach, the chametz, the sprouted grain was bottled before chametz, before Pesach b'shishim, and now since it's lach balach, it's not chayzer v'neir on Pesach. Okay, now let's take it a step further. Let's say you actually took the flour and you baked it into matzah before Pesach. Well, if the matzah was already baked before Pesach, then everybody would agree that the chametz is not chayzer v'neir. Because not only are you going to look at this as already being lach balach, there's no way, you can't find a kernel of flour in here, it's baked chametz, it's gush echad, it's one piece. It's not a taruvas anymore. So if you took this flour and you actually baked it into matzah before Pesach, everybody would agree, all the poskim would agree, that the chametz is not chayzer v'neir. Now the Mishnah Berurah is coming to tell you that v'das kama achronim, v'haskamas harbi achronim, many achronim agreed, the murta lefais afilu b'Pesach. Even if you did not bake it into matzah before Pesach, and you want to bake it now on Pesach, so you still have this taruvas chametz in the form of flour, the achronim agree, many achronim agree that you could even bake it on Pesach. V'after b'Pesach yisurei b'mashu, even though on Pesach the chametz that's in here is also b'mashu, kfar nispatel kaidem Pesach b'shishim. It doesn't matter, because before Pesach it was already batel b'shishim, v'kemach mikri lach balach, and a mixture of flour is considered a mixture of taruvas of lach balach, v'einoi chayzer v'neir, and the chametz is not chayzer v'neir. Miu, however, bal nefesh yachmer la'atzmai, a bal nefesh which we've said before, means somebody who cares about his nefesh. He cares about his neshama. He doesn't want chas v'shalom that any pagam should come to his neshama. Miu bal nefesh yachmer la'atzmai. Bal nefesh should be machmer. Le'efais kaidem Pesach, to bake these matzahs before Pesach, kisheyesh mitzumachim, if he knows that there were some sprouted grains in there. And again, like I explained, if you bake it before Pesach, then nobody will say chayzer v'neir, because now this taruvis is no longer a taruvis. Now it's nasa gush echad, it was made into one piece through the baking process, and nobody would say chayzer v'neir. Says the Mishnah Berurah Vayter, a nice cut in Yud Ches on the bottom line on Mem Zayin Amud Beis. The Ramah said, Mihu tzarech lirois. Even though I'm telling you it's okay if you didn't take out the sprouted grains, said the Ramah, you still have to see that you don't have so many sprouted grains that it's no longer batal b'shishim. Mihu tzarech lirois. So the Mishnah Berurah points out, these words of the Ramah, Koi rak adagon shetzamach. Over here, which case is he talking about? He's talking about where you didn't pick out the sprouted grains. That's when you have to make sure that you still have shishim keneged the sprouted grains. He's not going back, v'loyad la'el. The Ramah is not going back on the previous case where you didn't pick out the grains that were touched by a rodent. In that case, you don't have to make sure that you have shishim keneged that, because over there we said that those grains don't really become chametz from the minuscule amount of moisture in the mouth of a rodent. Says the Mishnah Berurah Vayter is cut in Yud Tes. What did the Ramah say? Tzarech liroi she'ein boi kol kach. You have to make sure that you don't have so many sprouted grains that you don't have 60 keneged them. Let's say you see that you don't have shishim keneged the sprouted grains. Then the Mishnah Berurah says, Sarich liv rar hamitzumachim. Then you have to pick out the sprouted grains. You don't have to pick out all of the sprouted grains. You just have to pick out enough of the sprouted grains that now you have shishim in the taruvis keneged the problematic sprouted grains. Because if you don't have shishim against the sprouted grains, then even b'di'evet, this taruvis is also bahana. Because like we said previously, the sprouted grains are mamash chametz gamur. Let's say you have a suffix. You look at the part of the pile over here where you see sprouted grains, and you say, I don't know. This is close. I don't know if I have shishim keneged these grains. Gam kein aser. It's still aser. Why is it aser? Very simple. Bevadai, you know with certainty that there is chametz gomer here. You have a suffix, maybe it's batal. So what is this? It's a suffix daraisa. Suffix daraisa, we go l'chumrah. Now you're looking at a mixture that's mamish chametz vadai, and now the halachah is that you have to do biur on this before Pesach. You have to get this mixture out of your possessions. And let's say you kept this mixture in your possession over Pesach, and you didn't do biur. Well, now you have a chametz shavar lava Pesach problem. But the Chavetz Chaim does tell you there's a way out. Yim kareim la'akum, you could sell this taruvis to a non-Jew, chutz midemei iser shabai. What you could do is, you could sell this mixture to a non-Jew, right? So you have this pile of grain that has grains in it that sprouted, so that's chametz gomer, it's a taruvis of chametz. You could sell it to a non-Jew and deduct from the price the value of the sprouted grains, so that you're not getting hana from that part. And this we saw previously in Siman Taf Mem Zayin in Sif Yod Aleph, where the Mechaber said that's the halacha by taruvis chametz. A taruvis chametz that you kept in your possession over Pesach, you're allowed to sell to a non-Jew after Pesach by deducting the value of the chametz portion of the mixture. Again, let's say we're dealing with this mixture where we had the sprouted grains mixed in here, and we do not have shishim keneged the sprouted grains. Yesh oimrim shemuter lahaisef aleim oid chitim kisherim kedei levatlan b'shishim. There are those opinions, this is brought down from a Taz, Chek Yaakov, that say that you could add non-sprouted grains to the grains to increase the percentage of non-sprouted grains against the sprouted grains. Or l'tachnan kaidem Pesach, now grind it before Pesach. And this is not called being mevatel iser lechatchila. Kevan du kaidem Pesach. So what are you doing over here? It's Purim, or it's Shushan Purim. And you want to go ahead, you want to go ahead, you want to start making your matzah. And you look at your grain and you say, uh-oh, I have sprouted grains in this pile, and I have so many sprouted grains that I might not have shishim in the non-sprouted grains against the sprouted grains. So what could I do? Well, my neighbor Yankel, he has grain also. I'll buy another few bushels of non-sprouted grain from him. I'll add it to my grain, thereby increasing the percentage of non-sprouted grain, and now I'll have shishim connected to sprouted grain. Are you allowed to do that? So there are those shittas that say that you're allowed to do this, and it's not called being mevatel iser lechatchila. We're not going to say that, well, what are you doing? You're going ahead and you're being mevatel the sprouted grains lechatchila. That's not called mevatel iser lechatchila. Why? Because right now the chametz is not aser. It's before Pesach. So we're going to look at it as heter. If you remember, we spoke about this many times, this question. How do we look at chametz before Pesach? Do we look at it as heter? Or do we say, well, it's called chametz, even though it's heter, but it is called chametz even before Pesach. So does that mean that it's not really heter in the context of Pesach or not? So you have those shittas that say that you're allowed to do this, but v'roiv ha-paiskim oisrin. However, the Mishnah Berurah does say that the majority of paiskim asa this. The Rashba, and he brings it down in the name of the Maharam, the Tur, he brings down a whole list here in the Sharitzion. And the problem is, the kevan de ma'arev adaita telechaloi sam bePesach. Since you're doing this in order to prepare matzah for eating on Pesach, havelei kemevatel bizman isurai. So we look at that as if you're doing the bittel in the zman iser chametz, and it's considered mevatel iser lechatchila. When we call mkayem b'shas adchak, efshir diyesh lismaich al hamakilin. However, the Mishnah Berurah does say that in a real shas adchak, you could rely on the more mekeldik opinion, and you could do this. Okay, now we're going to go a little bit weiter, and I love this sif. I'm so happy that we're doing this sif on Purim, because we're getting to something that everybody knows about. Excuse me just 1 second here. We're talking about a halachah now that everybody who eats matzah on Pesach, we all know this halachah. This is like real nitty gritty. This is real hilchos Pesach that we all recognize. Says the Mechaber in Sif Daled, the wheat that you're going to use to make your matzah's mitzvah. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Eis Katan Chaf Aleph, Sha'osin behem matzah's mitzvah, the wheat that you're going to use for your matzah's mitzvah. Ritzaynai loymar. What the Mechaber wants to say is, what does he mean when he says the matzah's mitzvah? Ha-matzah she'oichlin b'shtei haleilos harishainim mkayem bahem mitzvahs ba'erev teichlu matzahs. The matzah that you eat on the first 2 nights of Pesach, when you're sitting down to be mkayem the mitzvah of ba'erev teichlu matzahs. That on Yom Tov, on Pesach, in the first night of Pesach, there's a mitzvah daraisa to eat Pesach. Heim tzrichin shmira yisera. That wheat needs an extra level of shmira, an extra level of protection for chametz. Shmurah Matzah. This is the Shmurah Matzah that we eat for the mitzvah of Pesach. V'loi dai lanu b'ma she'en lanu reyasa shel chash chametz, shel chash chimutz. On that wheat, normally, we're never mechazik isura. We never assume iser. We assume heter. However, so normally we would look at wheat and we would say, unless there's something that's awakening in us a chash, that there might be chametz here. For instance, if we look at grain and we see signs that a rodent ate from it, so that awakens a chash. If we see wheat and we say, we see a siman over here in this wheat that it was exposed to moisture. So now we have a chash chimutz. But if we have nothing particular awakening a chash on our part to look at wheat and say that there might be a chimutz problem here, min hastam, we would assume that everything is okay. So normally we would look at wheat and we would say, no chash chimutz, we'll grind it up, we'll make matzah out of it, we'll eat it on Pesach. But not for matzah's mitzvah. Matzah's mitzvah needs shmira l'shem mitzvah. You have to do a shimur. You have to do an extra level of protection, of guarding this wheat l'shem matzah's mitzvah. And that's what we're saying over here. That mitzvah, that matzah that you use for the mitzvah, heim tzrichid shmira yisera. That needs an extra level of shmira. V'lo ydayin lanu, and it's not enough for us. B'mashe ein lanu reyasal shel chash chimutz. It's not enough to say that there's no reyasa. A reyasa is a weakening. It's not enough to say there's nothing that weakens our assumption that it's not chametz. So why do I need shmira? No, that's not enough. Shimur yisera l'shem mitzvahs matzah. We need an extra level of protection l'shma l'shem mitzvahs matzah. Tiksiv, because it says in the pasuk, ushamartem es hamatzos. You have to guard the matzos. V'hainu shetzarich sheyishmar l'shem matzah. You have to guard the matzah that you use for the mitzvah l'shem matzahs mitzvah. So now let's go back to the mechaber. So achitim sha'isim behem matzahs mitzvah. The wheat that you're going to use for matzahs mitzvah, to be mkayem your mitzvah, toiv l'shamran, it is good and proper to watch them and guard them, shelo yiplu aleim mayim mishas kitzira, to make sure that no moisture came upon them from the time of the harvest. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Eis Katan Chav Beis, mishas kitzira, from the time of the harvest. Ritzayna loymar, what the mechaber wants to say here is, sheyishmar me'es hahi v'hala, that you should guard the wheat from the time of the harvest and onward, shelo yipal alein mayim, that no water fell onto that wheat, l'shem matzahs mitzvah. And that shmira has to be done lishma, it has to be done l'shem matzahs mitzvah. Aval kaidem kitzira, but before the harvest, shadayin hayu mechubarim, while the wheat is still attached to the ground, ein lachush, you don't have to worry, afilu sheyadinan sheyard alein gshamim, even if you know it rained and water fell on the wheat. Because while the wheat is still attached to the ground, we don't worry about chimutz. The wheat does not become a chametz while it's attached to the ground and it's still growing from the ground. Even when wheat is still attached to the ground, in this yavshu legamri, if it fully ripened, ve'in tzarich oid lekarka, so that it's not getting anything anymore from the ground, mekabel chimetz im yard alein geshamim, it could theoretically become a chametz, even though it's still attached to the ground. V'alkein, and therefore, haminig liktzar dagan shel shmura ba'oidon lachin ktsas. The minig is that we make sure when we see matzah shmura me'es kitzira, the minig for Shmurah Matzah is that we harvest that wheat while it's still a little bit unripe. Because should it become totally ripe, it could become chametz if it's exposed to rainwater, even though it's still attached to the ground. So the mechaber said over here that the chitim, the wheat that we're going to use for our matzah shel mitzvah on the first 2 nights, it's proper that it should be shmira mishas kitzira. Says the mechaber weiter, ulapachos mishas techina. At least it should be shmura from the time of the milling, from the time of the grinding. So we have over here, first we said that really it should be shmura mishas kitzira, from the time of the harvest. Now we're saying, no, if you can't do mishas kitzira, at least mishas techina, at least from the time that it was taken to the mill. Says the Mishnah Berurah in Eis Katan Chav Gimel, mishas techina, lefi sha'az mikarvanaisan el hamayim, because by the tchina, where do you bring the wheat? You bring the wheat to the mill. Now, most mills in those days were water-driven. The mill was positioned next to a running stream that turned a wheel, and that's the wheel that turned the mill. Indeed, about 25 years ago, I went up to the mill where my matzah, my flour for my matzah production was milled, and it was a water mill up in New Paltz. They don't use that mill anymore. They use a different mill. But I remember going to that mill. It was a water-driven mill. So you're bringing the wheat to the water. So since you're bringing the wheat to the water, that's when tzarich shmira. Now, this is brought from a rush. If you look at the Berurah, Ois Cotton Zion, it says over here, K'moshe Kasav HaRush. This is brought from the Rush. What the Rush says is, this halachah, that you need matzah shmura l'shem matzahs mitzvah. So what did we say? We said normally we're not mechazik iser. Normally we have a presumption of heter. So, you want to eat matzah on Chol Hamoed Pesach, normally we would say, you don't need shmira unless you had a chash that for some reason you're worried that the grain might have become chametz. Otherwise, we have a presumption of heter. But for matzah shel mitzvah, we don't rely on a presumption of heter. Over there, we learn out from a pasuk that we need shmira. That's why we want shmira mishas ketzira, because after the ketzira, that's already when it could become chametz. So now we need shmira. The Rush says that the requirement for shmira, the daraisa dika requirement for shmira, does not come mishas ketzira. It begins once there's already some level of chash. There has to be some level of chash, of worry, that requires you to do shmira. What's that level? Once you bring it to the mill, you're bringing it close to water. Once you bring it close to water, now the pasuk tells you need shmira. So the Rush says you need shmira mishas tchina. So okay, that's why the Mechaber says over here, at least you should have matzah that shmura mishas tchina. If you take a look in the Biur halacha, Dibra Maskal Toiv L'Shamran Mishas Ketzira, that it's good to watch the matzah Mishas Ketzira. The Biur halacha says, V'dasa Pri Chadash L'Achriya Deshimur Mishas Ketzira Midinuhu, that this that you need Shmira Mishas Ketzira is Me'ikar Hadin. It's a requirement. Uli Ikuva, and if you don't have Shmira Mishas Ketzira, you can't be Yotze your mitzvah. Va'afilu B'di'evet. V'chedvarav nimtza b'kama rishayim. Maybe many rishayim say like this as well. Deshimerhu mishas ketzira, that the requirement for shmira, for Shmurah Matzah, for the matzah shel mitzvah, starts from the time of the harvest. V'aftim lo yimtza matzah sheshimor me'esa ketzira l'shem matzah. If you don't have Shmurah Matzah b'shas ketzira to be yotze the mitzvah, bevadai nucha lismay chaldas al Shulchan Aruch. You could rely on this sheet of the Shulchan Aruch, or levarich birkas achilas matzah, and you can make the bracha of achilas matzah and be yotze the mitzvah. Mikamakayem lechatchila bevadai nakayin lahakmer lamatzah shel mitzvah likach dafka matzah shmura me'esa ketzira. Lechatchila, you certainly should be machmer to get Shmurah Matzah, that Shmurah mishas ketzira. Ubishem hagra haviu gamkein shehechmir ma'oid. The gra was very machmer. Shaloi lechol rak masheshamar mishas ketzira, that he would only eat matzah that was Shmurah mishas ketzira. V'hu haya nizar bazeh kol yemei Pesach. He was nizar in this for the entire Yom Tov. He would only eat matzah shmur mishas ketzira, umitam, for the reason, shema yarad alei mayim b'mechuber la'achar shenisyavi shatfua, because he was worried for this problem that maybe the wheat ripened fully while it was attached to the ground and got rained on. And when we have matzah that shmura mishas ketzira from the time of the harvest, that means that they were nizhar, they were careful to check the wheat and to harvest it at the proper time, which is before it ripens fully, so that should it get exposed to rain, it would not become chametz. We're going to stop over here for today. Everyone should have a wonderful Freilich in Purim. So we spoke over here, mamish, 30 days before Purim, we spoke about the need for Shmurah Matzah, and Matzah that Shmurah Mishas Ketzira. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Thank you so much for joining me on such a hectic, busy day full of mitzvahs. Everybody should have a wonderful, wonderful day. Be well.